let's bring on Mark Ogden, Oggy, who actually is joining us live from Goodison Park. Oggy, welcome, my friend. Oggy's happy because the DJ has left, so he can talk to us finally. Oggy, here's a question for you. As Goodison Park is celebrating, it's kind of like mixed emotions, right? Because at the beginning before the game, prior to kickoff, there was other moments, other emotions from the Everton faithful, and then obviously the 1-0 win. Give us your overall picture of what happened today at Goodison Park.
Well, you're right. So before the game, there was a march of the fans protesting against the ownership of the way the club's being run, and the directors weren't here again today. The directors stayed away. But there was supposed to be a sit-in after the game where fans were going to sit in behind the goal and protest. But obviously they've won the game; they've all gone home. So there's no protest today. And look, Everton massively needed that win, the first win since October. I just want to pick up a point that Craig said about the pitch. So I'm sitting in the press box and I've got a great view of the pitch, and I did make the point to somebody during the game. It looks very, very patchy, very threadbare, very dry, like Craig said. And I did wonder whether Sean Dyche might have said to the groundsman, just don't water it so much today, because it's the sort of pitch that these things happen, and quite right too. You have to play to you have to play to your advantage. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I think if you're Sean Dyche, you want to maximise every possible opportunity, and that the pitch played to their favour today, because right from the outset, Everton were getting stuck in and winning tackles. The physical battle at Arsenal in the past have always failed to master at Bolton, at Burnley, all these places in the north of England. Today was one of those days, and there was a banner at the end, and Craig might remember this. It said, "Beware the dogs of war." Now, back in the day, back in the 90s, Everton had this team, Joe Royle had this team, and he called the dogs of war because they were in this situation. They had to get points, and I think it was Joe Parkinson, John Abril, other players, and they would basically go around kicking people, winning the ball, being nasty. Everton are a bit more technical than that, but that's basically their approach. Doucouré was brilliant, but he was getting stuck in, and it was the dogs of war in many ways. It was Everton reducing it to a basic scrap of physical commitment, and Arsenal didn't match up to it. And sometimes, we talk about all the data and all the passing stats and the possession stats. This game boiled down today that Everton wanted it more, and they were winning the tackles, and they were more committed in the 50-50s, and that won them the game.
Correct. Just go back. Just go back to that point actually that Augie made about the pitch. It takes me back to, I played in an FA Cup quarter-final at Selhurst Park against Wimbledon. Now, Wimbledon was sharing that stadium obviously with Crystal Palace, as it's their home ground at that point. And the pitch was already terrible because we'd played on it a couple of weeks before, but we got there on that night and we had, on our side, amongst others, we had Ruud Gullit and Mark Hughes and all these sort of great players. And we pitched up and we couldn't believe it. I mean, you can go back and look at videos of this. There was barely a blade of grass on the field. And as the story goes, Joe Kinnear, the then manager at the time, Augie, had actually had, because there was no sprinklers, had the fire brigade in and had absolutely hosed the pitch. Any grass left on it, had hosed it down. And it was just dirt and mud. And but it didn't work. It didn't work because we beat them. So there is I mean, people might laugh at this kind of thing, but there is a leveler, and for some managers in the Premier League, they'll use anything. They'll use anything in desperation. And I'm not saying that was a tactic from Sean Dyche today, but we certainly saw somewhat of a leveler with the field because of the bobbly. I think maybe one of the reasons Odegaard was taking as many touches. But I just think, Mark, that this wasn't the Arsenal that we've become to know and sort of love and enjoy this season. This was an Arsenal that struggled with the intensity, that struggled with the passing, and they just didn't look like creating. In fact, they didn't really look like scoring today, and we can't say that many times this season.
I wonder if today was the first day of the kind of the running. I know we're early; it's only halfway through, but it felt like the first weekend of spring. It just felt different. It just felt the sense that teams like Everton are scrapping for. They know they're in the mess, so they have to start getting points. And I think every game that Arsenal play now, the opposition will have something to play for. There is a change of emphasis at this stage of the season where there are no easy games, as we know, but teams tend to focus more on their own objectives now. And Everton had their massive objective today was to get something, because if you're Sean Dyche, your first 2 games in charge at Arsenal at home and Liverpool away, that is the worst possible start. The league leaders who haven't lost in September and Liverpool, but all of a sudden he's beaten Arsenal. And they can go to Anfield in a couple of, in 10 days' time, knowing how Sean Dyche and Klopp, winds Klopp up. That Everton has suddenly got belief. And then after that, it's Leeds at home. And then you can see a path to Everton getting out of this, because they've got a manager who will, like you say, get everything out of everything he can. He made Calvert-Lewin, 10 times better today than he has been all season. He just, on the touchline today, Sean Dyche, it was almost like in emergency mode. He was more active than I've seen him for a long time. He was energising his team. Every tactical information, applause and thumbs up. But I just think he wanted to be a presence, because with Frank at times, he was too passive. I think when the players see a manager like that, it just keeps them focused. And I think at times Everton this season have lapsed concentration. It's cost them in big games. Dyche was making sure that every single second they were focused and on it. And it got them a result. It got them a win.
Yeah, this is why I said early on, by the way, that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Because to your point about Frank Lampard, it's something that he will learn, obviously, as a young manager. But sometimes you do need that kind of professorial on the touchline, encouraging, especially when the chips are down. And now, to your point, everybody, as you are both talking, I'm looking at the table. And obviously, as we are speaking, Everton are 17th with 18 points, one above Wolves, go back to 18th. West Ham and Leeds United and Leicester City all have 18 points as well. So this battle, Craig, at the bottom of the table, it's tough. Can Everton do it, or is it too early to tell?
Well, if they hadn't changed manager and gone down the road of Sean Dyche, I would probably have said no. But to go back to Augie's point, Dyche, there's no doubt Sean Dyche knows what he's doing, right? There's absolutely we can talk about styles and all that, and he's talked about this quite a lot, both in his time in between jobs and obviously his press conferences. And he's always said, look, I can only do and play a certain style with the players that I've got. And in some sense, that's been correct at every club that he's been at. But for those that believe Sean Dyche is just an old school, hoof it forward manager, it's wrong. If you go back to his time at all the clubs he's been at, he's heavily into the data and the analysis and all the coaching. He's big on that. Hugely. I've talked to him about it. I know his coaching staff, Ian Warren, who was a neighbour of mine in the UK. Even when they were managing in the Championship, they're hugely into the fine details of what's going to make players and teams better. That's not to suggest that they're all of a sudden going to be trying to play like Man City and Arsenal and all these teams. No, they're not. He's very pragmatic in that respect. But he'll leave no stone unturned to try and get this squad out, and they can't make any changes now. And now that he's in there, not just because they won today, I think I would be saying the same thing had they lost today, because he's only been in a few days. I really feel Everton now are in a much better footing to stay up than they were before the appointment of Sean Dyche, primarily because this guy in this division and the Championship knows what he's doing.
I think it was smart as well. I think he took Calvert-Lewin off just before the hour and he brought Maupay on. And Maupay's got a bit of history with Arsenal, and he really antagonises Arsenal after a game. It was 18 months ago.
He has a history with everybody.
Yeah, but he really wound Arsenal up, and you could see when he came on, right at the end, there was an incident with Zinchenko.
Yeah.
When you've got a lead and you try to niggle away at teams, when you've got a guy who's a bit of a pest like that who does chase and niggle away at you, it just changes the dynamic of the game. And I thought it was a perfect substitution at the right time. Just little things like that, like Craig said. He's a proper manager. He's a guy that is a leader on the touchline, and he knows how to win a game. He knows how to win a game ugly at times. And I just think that Everton haven't had that with Lampard, and even under Benitez didn't have it. They've now got a manager who is perfect for their situation. And I think the fans have embraced it as well, because he feels like one of them. Everton are, without generalising, they are a working class club, a club that's puts industry above a lot of other things, and that's Dyche. Dyche embodies what the fans want, and that sort of unity is what Everton need right now, because they've had no unity for a long time, and obviously the stuff behind the scenes off the field won't go away soon. But at least they've got a manager they can look at and think that this guy knows what he's doing, and the players think that as well, and that counts for an awful lot.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.